resilient, resilient health systems, and the design and evaluation of digital health technologies using both qualitative and quantitative methods. So currently, Anne leads research exploring the barriers and enablers of innovative virtual care interventions in aged care settings, while also contributing to a range of digital health human factors projects within our school. Her insights are helping shape safer, more effective, and human-centred health systems for the future. And having said that wonderful introduction, over to you, Anne, to wow us with your technological brain.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and thank you so much for having me today. So I'll just share my screen. Can you see that one okay? You see that okay?
Yes.
Just swap screens, and so we're seeing your got it.
Got it.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Excellent. Right, excellent. So today I'll be presenting to you a wonderful project that I'm leading. It's a 3 to 4 year project led by Dr. Meredith Makem and Melissa Baisari, who's in your room there. We're looking at ensuring the quality, safety, acceptability and sustainability of video telehealth, specifically in the context of aged care and primary care, so that's general practice. Starting off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands of which Sydney University is located, and this is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to the knowledge embedded forever with the Aboriginal custodian of country, and today I come to you from the lands of the Cammeraygal people. There are a lot of partners, wonderful partners involved in this tranche of research. It's been funded by 2 large Australian government grants, and within it we have a lot of partners from different colleges, so practitioners, we've got rural and remote medicine, we've got different sorts of primary healthcare networks, we've got digital health and health consumers, and I'll talk a little bit about our consumers shortly. So I think we're probably all aware as healthcare workers that aged care at the moment is in a bit of a crisis situation. So we know that the global population is rapidly aging. So just in the last decade, we've had an increase in 32% of people aged over 65 years. Of course, with that comes the increase in people needing to go to that assisted living in aged care homes. So since 2013, you can see there's been that 57% increase. However, the issue is that while people are aging and the aged care home people going in is increasing, we've got lower levels of general practitioners providing care. And this is specifically difficult in our rural and remote regions in Australia. So we know that there's this urgent need for safe and effective models of care. So, of course, since our COVID pandemic, there was a rapid uptake of virtual care. And what we've seen is that telehealth, when it's part of a holistic model of care and targeted for specific needs, so obviously it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, it does offer a solution to address this gap. And the research, and we've seen already that it's specifically handy for people with chronic issues. So I'm talking about wound care, perhaps small issues, chronic conditions, things like that. So we know that comprehensive person care research, however, is needed to look at its safety and quality of care in these settings. It's already being used in some places, and we need to sort of go in there and see exactly what's happening. First, I'd like to sort of set up what we've been sort of seeing in the communities already. So I'm not sure, I'd be really interested to hear what's going on in the US. So we typically a lot of the primary healthcare networks have donated these systems. So the second photo there is a telehealth system called Vision Flex. And it's amazing in that it's got 2 screens. So you've got a patient who sits on one side, the doctor on the other, and they can do all sorts of remote monitoring, take images, all the scopes that you've needed, heart rate monitors, all the rest of it. And the nurses who have been trained on it and are using it really love it. The residents love it, and the GPs at the other end love it. So we have an example here of a system that's working really, really well. Unfortunately, that's not what's happening in most places. So our project aims, so firstly, there's 3 phases. The first one we've just kicked off. We've had our ethics approval pass through, and we're going to be going out and seeing what people are doing. So we're going to go across the state. We're going to look and see how they're finding telehealth in terms of person-centeredness. We're going to also do some human factors research where we're looking at the barriers and enablers for all of the communities, so all people involved in telehealth. And of course, this includes everyone in the system. So we've got our residents, our carers, our staff, general practitioners. We've also got nurse practitioners and practice managers. The next phase, which will be taking off next year, is where we're going to get together and conduct a group of workshops where we'll be looking at co-designing with our consumer representatives. And we're going to be designing a digital resource hub, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment, and a set of educational materials where we want to try and help people understand when and how to use telehealth. And in the final phase, we're going to implement this solution, evaluate, and redo all the measures, sort of like a pre-post design that we did again in phase 1, and that'll be in year 3. So just to provide some context of where this research is taking place. So here we have our wonderful country surrounded by sea, and within there we have the state of New South Wales, which is contains the largest population density in Australia. Now, what we've got here is our 3 primary healthcare networks that we're going to be conducting the research in. So you can see the little blue blip there is the Sydney part, Northern Sydney. So they're going to capture our urban or our metropolitan research focus. We've also got Southeastern, which is a little bit more densely populated than the remote areas. And we've got, look at how large the big Western area is. So within that PHN, we're focusing our research in a town called Dubbo, which is about 5.5 hours drive west of Sydney. But within there, the reason we're doing this sort of separated across the state research focus is because they all have different needs. They're going to have different needs. And so we need to make sure that we capture those specific needs. And I'll mention consumers here as well. It's really important when we run this type of human-centered focus research is that we involve consumer voices. So these are people who are representatives of the community, and they volunteer their time to come on our committees and help steer the research to ensure that our voices are heard. All right, so just briefly, the participants, as I mentioned, will involve aged care homes where we'll be targeting residents and carers. And of course, with a large proportion of residents living with dementia, we definitely want to include their stories as well via their carers. We also have our staff, and an interesting model that's emerging is now the nurse practitioner model. And I'm particularly passionate about this because I see this as a way to close the gap in a lot of ways. So a lot of nurse practitioners are starting to work in this field where they're providing video telehealth remotely to aged care residents, and they'll visit them face-to-face every 3 months and the rest of it. So they build that relationship. And so I'm very interested in looking at this model of care. So you can see the 3 phases there. All of the participants will invited to repeat participation across the 3 years. Right, so now down to the plan. So what are we going to be doing? So firstly, as I said, we're going to be going out. We're just going to be conducting surveys, some observation and interviews, asking questions about what they're doing. We're going to be collecting data about their actual, so in Australia, we have a Medicare benefit scheme. So we have a Medicare, like a number every time a GP does a consultation, they get a claim through the government, so they get a number. And so we're going to collect that data independent to us going places so that we have those sort of quantitative numbers ticking along, because we want to see if it changes across the 3 years. We're going to be doing observations and interviews, as I said, and that is very much targeted towards understanding the barriers and enablers of telehealth. In phase 2, as I mentioned, we're going to be conducting the workshops, and then in phase 3, we're going to implement and evaluate. All right, so just breaking it down a little bit more. So with our telehealth encounters, as I said, we've got our quantitative measures. Services Australia in Australia, government will be providing us the data about their telehealth use. I've also understand now that nurse practitioners will also get a Medicare benefit number, so we'll be collecting that data too. And we'll also be asking on the aged care home side about their telehealth counts and instances. One of the frameworks that we're going to be centering in to understand person-centred practice is, of course, the person-centred practice framework, which most of you in the room will have seen this. This is the work of Brendan McCormick. We're going to be using the 2 surveys that they have developed, which reflects person-centred practice. So one of the surveys is directed for staff and one is for the patients/consumers. Other surveys will be getting telehealth usability and also patient satisfaction there. And of course, as I mentioned, we'll be going out just observing people doing telehealth, asking people what they think of it. And this will be conducted using our human factors framework, which we use often in this type of research. And this is what this Sept, so Systems Engineering Initiative for Patient Safety. It's important when you conduct this type of research or when you're looking at anything to do with digital health or implementing or designing a solution, is that you consider the entire work process system that includes processes and the outcomes as well. So we'll go in, we'll be asking a series of questions and mapping those findings to this model. So we'll be looking at the technology and tools, the higher organisation, who are the people, what tasks are they doing, and the environment they're in. So you can see how this model is perfect for considering the whole system. And I don't know how much the audience understands about human factors, but the idea here is that if something happens or there's an error in a system, a person makes an error, we tend to sort of take the approach that you can't really point a finger at one person. It's an entire systematic approach. So we sort of look at things in the entire system. Okay, so next year we'll be doing our workshops, and this is an iterative process. So obviously we've got individual groups, so we'll be separating them all first, just talking to them about their experiences again, giving back the feedback on the findings from stage 1, and then coming up with this design of the intervention. You can see that we also have a consumer standalone group. Then this will be developed by one of our partners called Medcast. We evaluate the intervention. And then finally, to do final checks, we do interviews with subject matter experts. So these might be a couple of general practitioners, a couple of aged care workers, where we finally drill down into what's working and what's not working, just a final check of the intervention. So what's the intervention, I hear you ask? The intervention is, it'll be a digital hub of resources. So this is something that people will go to support them in understanding when and how to use telehealth. This will be specifically designed for each of the PHNs. So we'll have one for the Western New South Wales region, one for the Sydney, and one for the southern part. The idea is that people will be able to use this to support their use of video telehealth and basically give them the confidence to use it. We'll also be going in at the implementation where we'll be conducting education sessions with people and giving free access to support throughout the study. This is an example of what a hub looks like. This is not our hub, obviously, but this is one of Medcast's hub. This is the type of screen or digital support tool that they will see, where they can click into different things. And one of the things we'll be developing also is a decision tree. So healthcare workers can work out, like it's a cognitive aid to help people understand, does telehealth suit this particular population or this person? And as I mentioned, when we come to phase 3 in 2 years' time, we'll be repeating all those measures again to see if there's been any change in the uptake of video telehealth. Sorry, is everything okay? Yep. Oh, just a little, we're still in the phase of, we're still designing our implementation plan, but at this stage it looks like a pre-post. So you can see that phases 1, we've got a baseline. We're going to be splitting people into 2 groups. Group 1, so the groups will be paired of residential aged care homes and GPs. They'll be paired, so we'll have a group of pairs in group 1 and a group of pairs in group 2. And basically what we see here is a 6-month delay. So group 1 will get the intervention exposure, which is the training, and then the 6 months intervention, and then we'll do the evaluation at the same time. We'll be doing the training at the last for group 2, at the end there, implementation and evaluation. So all up, that will take 1 year. Our expected outcomes, well, we expect to generate evidence on the current use barriers, enablers and best practice models of video telehealth in aged care settings. We're going to deliver that digital hub of resources for people to use and support implementation, with the goal being that people feel confident to use video telehealth. They understand its use and when not to use it, and that, of course, speaks to patient safety. We're going to use the evidence-based methods to co-design, implement and evaluate the digital hub of resources. And the results will also generate new health economic data. So we have health economists working alongside with us who will also be doing a complete review of the economics of the video telehealth. It'll help reduce inequities, specifically in aged care for people in remote regions and primary care shortages. And one of the issues, of course, we know at the moment is that there are a lot of unnecessary hospital transfers. So we find that even if a patient falls and they're on, say, blood thinners, they automatically go to hospital. And these are the types of things that people are sort of starting to say to me, that'd be really great if we could avoid that, because we all know there are risks to older adults when they are in hospital. They often decline. Crucially, the project will enhance resident wellbeing by enabling safe, holistic, at-home care through telehealth. And that is my beautiful mother there sitting in the middle in her aged care home. I'd like to acknowledge Professor Macon, who is our CIA on this project, and of course Melissa Brace-Sari, who is helping to lead the human factors part of the project, the Australian Government, National Health and Medical Research Council, and the Medical Research Future Fund. Thank you.
I just have first a very quick explanation to our American counterparts about the importance of telehealth in Australia. Most of Australia's population, 90%, live in cities and inner urban areas, and most of those are on the eastern seaboard, which leaves the rest of the country quite sparse with trying to get healthcare or equality and equity of healthcare across the whole of the country. So yeah, telehealth is a very important factor going forward in Australia. So I also have just one quick question for you, Anne. You had almost a step wedge going on there with your intervention. Have you considered running Team A for the entire time as well as Team B coming on, just to see whether it helps with embedment over that extra? Is this over a year? Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, if
we
you
are open. Yeah.
Okay.
John, we are still in design of that phase, so I'd be very happy to hear your thoughts. I think the issue I'm being told is, well, we're going to have trouble with sample size no matter what we do. So we've only got 12 pairs in each group. But you're suggesting that we keep one on just to see if it's sustainable?
More just to see what the extra 6 months of intervention does. If you run an intervention for 12 months in Team A and the intervention for 6 months in Team B, does it embed a lot more, and are you getting more kind of input into the 12-month intervention as opposed to the 6 month?
Yeah, no, that's something really, I think something I'd definitely like to consider. This is the beauty of a project just starting off. See, we can, yeah, we haven't put the protocol in for that stage yet. So it's really, really still in design phase. So thanks for that. We'll definitely consider that.
Sorry, I jumped in, everybody, just because it's early, and if I didn't get my thoughts out now, they would go. Has anybody else got some questions or some comments?
Looks like we have one. Yoonhee? Is that how you pronounce that?
Thanks, Anne. I'm from City Nursing School, but this is the first time I'm hearing about the project, so I'm so glad I made it today. Thanks, Anne. And just to clarify, when you talk about telehealth in aged care, are you referring to all avenues of telehealth in aged care, or are you referring to specific parts? So, for example, general practitioners, family physicians, consultations, or are you talking about allied health, hospital? Yes, if you don't mind,
Right.
be fine.
Yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear about that. This is a GP focused project, so it is definitely between primary care providers. But what I've seen is that nurse practitioners also fall into that model in a few of the practices. So the nurse practitioners will be included. So it's only that primary care context. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mary. I have a kind of a follow-up question to that because I was going to ask. I'm not a nurse, full disclosure. I'm a dietitian and an exercise physiologist. So I was curious, kind of along those lines, like what I don't know how the health system works in Australia. So here you would have to refer to a registered dietitian. So I didn't know if you do that in primary care, if that's like another service.
Yeah, look, that's a really good point, because one of the things that's come up already in our scoping, I've done a couple of scoping visits, as I said, to Canberra, also to Dubbo now, is that they often have the telehealth to the dietitian as well, but they are referred on either. You don't need a GP referral. It's usually through the nursing home, like the aged care place will refer to a dietitian, or sometimes psychologists. The GPs can do that too. The geriatrician, though, being a specialist doctor, they do need a referral from the GP. But I do find that there is a lot of telemedicine going on for these allied health supports as well, and physio and OT, etc. So it is improving, and I think that we'll be getting, we'll see that happening as well. But we'll have to keep the project focused on the GP and the nurse practitioner model. Yeah.
Sorry, Mary, you can ask your question.
Okay.
Thanks, Anne. That was a great presentation. And as somebody who had an outreach to nursing homes in the first 2 years of the pandemic and saw what happens when telehealth just gets chucked in, I'm really glad to see something that's being designed. I suppose my question, you talked in terms of evaluation about evaluating people's understanding of when to use telehealth and when not to use telehealth. And I think this is a really big issue. And I was just wondering if you could speak to how you're going to evaluate that.
So sort of phase 2, phase 3, we're actually developing a decision tree, which will be a tool, and that'll be in consultation with GPs and aged care workers. The idea is that I think a lot of the time people are unsure. I'm finding that people are concerned about using it when in actual fact it probably can be safely used if they apply all the tools and the monitoring and everything that they can do either synchronously or asynchronously with doctors. I think that'll be the formal way, but also talking to people who are really got the video telehealth model up and going. They will also have a good insight as to who suits this. And I think that what I'm seeing, it's the chronic conditions, the wound care, perhaps some heart, minor chronic heart problems, COPD, things like this that are not the acute issues. But if anything that you can avoid sending people to hospital, I think is the goal here, as long as it's not to the detriment of their safety. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. Thanks, Anne.
Okay.
I had one other question, sorry. And just, my own ignorance and how things worked in Australia versus the US, but in the rural areas, do you have reliable internet in order to do telehealth? Because that was one of the troubles here, especially in Georgia, is we don't have reliable internet in the rural areas. And so people just weren't getting care, that they needed.
So the answer is no, in short. In the most remote areas, it's not great. But I do know that when I was in Dubbo, they said they had excellent internet. It's NBN, like serviced by a big national network, broadband network. And they've found that even in their little remote satellite towns, they've got really good internet. But I am sure that it is not great. I am absolutely sure it is not great in the other areas. So that is one of the barriers.
Yeah.
Having said that, we do hear of people coming in, like it's still going to be a shorter distance for me to drive, say 3 hours into Dubbo to then do the consultation through telehealth with a specialist in Sydney, then say going to Sydney. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like not an ideal world, but we do sort of start to see that they'll work out where the internet's great or the specialist, support is, and then they'll turn up to that. Yeah. But it's not ideal,
we have
no.
hubs here. Yeah, we have hubs here as well. But unfortunately, there's a lot of hospital closures, and so we just have trouble with access everywhere, I guess.
Yeah. Do you have telehealth systems like the one I showed, the picture?
I'm not a clinician, so I know we do have systems, but I don't know how expansive they are. So I'll let some of the nurses that are in practice talk about that. I don't know if we have anybody that's works in that field.
I could just say that in the state of Georgia, there is something called Georgia Memory Net, which is a series of 7 diagnostic centers around the state that do diagnosis of dementia illnesses. They have satellite clinics in Department of Public Health offices in very rural counties, where a caregiver and a patient can go and have a telehealth assessment done. So that's one version of it. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Just in light of time, while you're on, Ken, you may as well continue. Is somebody going to introduce you there, or are you going to introduce yourself?
Yes, I can introduce him.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you want to get your slides up, Ken, you can do that while I'm talking. Oh, okay. So Dr. Ken Hepburn is a tenured professor whose work recognizes the central role that families, friends, and communities play in caring for the increasing and increasingly diverse number of persons living with Alzheimer's disease and similar dementia illnesses, and helping them to remain as independent as possible in their communities. Through a series of projects that, with support from the National Institute on Aging and the National Institute of Nursing Research and the National Alzheimer's Association, Dr. Hepburn and his colleagues have established the evidence base for the Savvy Caregiver Program and Telesavvy. So I think you guys' projects really kind of align tonight. And it's psychoeducation programs for caregivers of persons with Alzheimer's disease and other dementia disorders. So,
Thank you. So before I say anything, first of all, I want to say hello again to Dr. Jun, who I haven't seen. We met a couple of months ago, and glad to see you. And following up on the design suggestion that you made, I had thought maybe an adaptive design, so that taking the learning from the first set, you might tinker a little bit, think about tinkering with the second part of the experiment, but that's not my expertise and not why I'm here, but it did come to mind. The third is carers, as you use it, is what I would call family caregivers. Is that right?
Yeah, so anybody who can act on behalf of the person. So,
Okay.
you know, if say they're in the home and they don't have a carer, I think a nursing member of staff or somebody will be assigned as their legal voice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So you all can see my screen?
yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to run quickly through the sort of genealogy of these programs. And I hope I can do this. Yeah, so psychoeducation is really the method that I've been using for the last 30 years. And it's a behavior change intervention. It's really meant, and I'm focused on family caregivers particularly, not other paid caregivers. It's a strategy that's meant to enhance knowledge and skill, but most importantly, enhance the sense of self-efficacy in family caregivers, the sense that they feel they can come up with solution-focused coping behaviors in the face of whatever comes at them on a day-to-day basis. The strategies we use are kind of instructional. We provide critical information, but also we want to make these programs as interactive as possible, make them as active learning as possible. And so we have lots of exercises, and we also do homework. We introduce principles and strategies of care, sort of the why you would do something, the how you would do something, and particularly looking at the behavioral target of designing activities that will be engaging for a person living with dementia. These are people living at home, and also strategies for getting them to engage in the activity and to remain engaged for as long as is pleasant. Very important part of the psychoeducation strategy is having people to practice this. Do this, try this at home, and then come back and report on it and receive coaching, reinforcement from the facilitator. So we usually have a clinician facilitator, it could be a nurse, a social worker, occupational therapist, who will listen to, oh, that's what you did. Terrific job. You might also try this. And then also, it's important to see that others in a group situation, because most of these are group programs, are having the same or similar kinds of experiences and successes. I think it's clear that we're using essentially a strategy that we use to teach nurses or physicians or clinicians. You teach the facts, give the strategies, go practice, inject that grapefruit or use the simulation lab, and then watch over their shoulder as they put these things into practice and give feedback. So it's really the clinical training model from novice to expert. Our premises for focusing on family caregiver is that this is a new role for people, and it's a role that's really clinical in nature. It may be that people enter into this because of their relationship with someone, but the relationship doesn't teach them the role, and it's multifaceted, and it's one that is dealing with a situation that's prolonged and progressive, and frankly, it has a downward trajectory for the person living with it. So we think that most people who are family caregivers are not prepared or trained to carry out the role successfully. So they could benefit, we hope, from these programs. So we start with the Savvy Caregiver Program. That is a program that developed at the University of Minnesota. My colleagues and I developed it in something called the Minnesota Family Workshop, and then later the Savvy Caregiver Program. These are in-person, multi-week group sessions, 8 to 15 participants, and it's focused on day-to-day caregiving. The curriculum is heavily reliant on nursing, occupational therapy, and family therapy disciplines. So we want people to understand. So if you think about learning objectives, understand the illness-produced losses, have a target for what their practice is. And that target we call contented involvement, that the person living with dementia will proceed through days that are as safe, calm, and pleasant as possible. And we are really heavily rely on the occupational therapy principles of task analysis and design, so that we want people to be able to assess what is the person's interest in an activity, but what is the person's capacity to carry out that task or activity, and what kinds of help, and recognize that the design of the task, the structure of the task, the nature of the support is going to have to be tightened to the ongoing progression of capacity for independent functioning that's affected by the dementia illness. So the content of SABI, we want people to really understand this is not normal aging. It's an illness-produced condition, and its function is really the issue. Being able to do things is what we say is affected by the dementia. So we provide stage-based strategies to promote engagement in tasks and activities. Early stage, you can say to somebody, help me cook dinner, will you make the salad? Middle stage, will you help me make dinner? Here's some lettuce, would you shred it into the bowl? Late stage, come with me to the kitchen. I'm going to make dinner. Stay with me. So it goes from very active participation to passive participation, but the notion of being engaged in that activity. So you can think about that in terms of, a whole day trying to design those kinds of things and carry them out. So we focus on the person. What does the person like to do? How much structure does she need? How much support does he need? And also we have strategies for effective communication. So all of us are talking in complete paragraphs. As the disease progresses, language has to be tailored to what the person can understand, but it has to be augmented with visual cues and tactile cues as well. Avoiding confusion is quite important. So instead of having the whole family over for dinner at Christmas, have a series of small family gatherings so that there aren't 11 grandchildren around. And dealing with the emotional truth in the moment. If the person says, I want to go see mom, but mom's been dead 20 years. What is going on? He is thinking about mom. I don't need to say mom died 20 years ago. I certainly don't need to say or want to say, sure, let's visit next weekend, because that's the one thing that he's going to remember and keep asking me about. Instead, oh, mom, I remember the story you used to tell about mom. Remember that? Tell me about that again. Let's talk about that. And after a while, that's great. Would you like some tea? So that's the kinds of strategies. And really a modest goal for the caregiver. You do not have to become a saint to do this. And you're gonna have times when you lose it, and that's just life. So you got to take care of yourself. Multiple trials. We got significant improvements in caregiver emotional well-being in the areas of burden, depression, stress. Significant improvement in the sense of self-efficacy, a sense of I can do this. A significant mediating effect of self-efficacy on well-being. And that has become almost a mantra for me. If we can increase self-efficacy, we're going to increase the capacity to cope more effectively, and that's going to help well-being. Very high participant ratings. They love it. They want to, they will recommend it very highly to their friends. But the most important limitation is it's in person. So this is back to the need for some sort of telehealth. So now we go from the Savvy Caregiver Program to Telesavvy. And Telesavvy is an online, synchronous, asynchronous version of Savvy. There are 7 weekly online group sessions with caregivers from all over in groups of 8 to 12. The synchronous groups very much emphasizing interactive learning and the coaching, and they deliver content, and they review the content that's provided asynchronously through 36 brief video lessons delivered daily by email link. And this is content, and these videos are delivered by experts. We have enactments of the principles and strategies that are done by fictional families, and weekly segments on self-care. Those of you who are nurses, I think, know the phrase, nurses are the instrument of their patient's well-being. You have a responsibility to keep the instrument in tune. And so we emphasize that throughout Telesavvy. Results, we had a three-arm trial, 271 participants enrolled from Maine to Hawaii, and we even had somebody who participated for a couple of groups from Great Britain. So this thing, spans the globe. And compared to attention control and usual care, again, significant improvements in caregiver well-being, response to their care recipient's behavior, even the dyadic relationship between the caregiver and the care recipient improved, and the caregiver's assessment of the recipient's quality of life showed significant improvement. And this was over a 12-month period. Again, significant improvement in caregiver self-efficacy and a mediating effect of self-efficacy on those outcomes. Pretty happy about that. So now we've kind of, lots of things have grown from Savvy and Telesavvy. So out of the Savvy Caregiver Program, 2 other programs, Savvy Advanced and Savvy Express, and an online facilitator training program, as well as Telesavvy. So Savvy Express and Savvy Advanced Express, this is a shortened 3-week, but longer sessions, and it's now asynchronous as a group, recognizing the constraints of caregivers. And Savvy Advanced is for Savvy graduates, addresses non-day-to-day Savvy caregiving issues. The next stage, though, is the development of other programs very linked to Telesavvy. So caregiving during crisis, and Telesavvy at Home were funded through supplements to administrative supplements to the Telesavvy NIA project. And it basically, caregiving during crisis was focused on maintaining care recipient and caregiver safety during COVID. So this was all during COVID, as well as a little bit of navigating the healthcare system. And you may be interested in some of that stuff for your carers in the project that you're now launching. And we tried to develop a fully asynchronous version of Savvy. So we're putting out these routes for new ideas. And then the next thing that has happened is the kind of development of some parallel psychoeducation programs. And so these are focused on very specific caregiving contexts and problems, but they build on the same psychoeducational principles, especially interactivity and the active principles. So active practice of principles. So keeping on course is centered on families who are living with this uncertainty of mild cognitive impairment. So we think this is a precursor kind of course. Caregiver boot camp. These are families who have within the last year received a relatively definitive diagnosis of dementia and are sort of wrapping their heads around it, starting to wrap their heads around it. Caregiver as Navigator is asynchronous program to strengthen caregivers' ability to navigate healthcare, legal and financial, and family systems as part of their caregiving role. So Savvy looks at, and Telesavvy, day-to-day caregiving. Caregiver as Navigator recognizes there's a whole world of systems that caregivers are responsible for navigating, and that's what this is about. And Caregiving While Black is a group-based program focused on the care and challenges dealing with systematic inequities in care systems. So that's the genealogy continues now, and we're waiting to hear on something called Rural Family Dementia Caregiving, which is we want to augment Telesavvy to focus on how to manage healthcare in a increasingly spare resource deserts in rural America. And this includes finding and training home care workers, mustering community support from neighbors and institutions, dealing with distant family, and also how to deal with, I think, thank you, Anne. We're probably going to add a segment if we get funded to how to deal with the kind of telehealth realities. And then we have, through Savvy has spawned a number of adaptations, cultural adaptations. So we have worked with groups in Hawaii. I'm working with someone who has working in the Latino community and another investigator in the Korean low literacy English speaking Korean population. They're grounded in Savvy, but we're trying to really evolve them to incorporate and kind of grow out of the substantively different cultural matrices within which they're occurring. And then the last piece I want to just talk about is our Emory Roybal Center, of which I'm the co-director. And we support behavioral interventions looking at a variety of different caregiving contexts. So we've supported this program for Lewy body dementia caregivers. Another one, this is one where we're teaching advanced nursing skills, turning wound management for caregivers. And these are all investigators from around the country. These are not necessarily Emory investigators. This is a adaptation of Telesavvy for frontotemporal dementia. one that was designed by occupational therapists in Appalachia region of the U.S., promoting home safety in rural settings, an app-based program for Chinese caregivers. One of my very favorite, and this is we're teaching improvisational comedy techniques to caregivers to be able to respond positively in the moment to whatever is going on, whatever comes out in the caregiving situation. And we have one that's caring for dementia with mixed delirium. So these are just some of the programs that we're sponsoring. But I wanted to just kind of deal with this provide as kind of a genealogy or work through this as this is what we've been doing with this psychoeducation program. And we're really wide open to collaborating in all kinds of different contexts for that. So, end of spiel. Thank you. Questions, comments?
Ken, Tom Buckley here. Thank you for that. Unlike several people around in the virtual room and in the room here who are experts in this topic, I'm not, but I am an observer of my wife and her mother's got dementia. And I'm very interested in that statement you said there of it's a role, not a relationship, the caregiver. And I think I took a photograph of that slide, and that I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, because I think that's where my wife gets stuck in providing caregiving, but actually being a daughter, and it ends up in a lot of turmoil and psychological stress, how you navigate the role while also in this phase of being in a mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah. So I have two responses. One is that one of the things that we teach in Savvy Telesavvy is the nursing process, that you have to be able to, so I should also say savvy is a kind of a slang word for being street smart. And you have to have this capacity, nurses have it and doctors, to step back and assess the situation and based on what you understand of it, create a plan and then implement it and see how it works. It's kind of like the study design that Anne talked about in a way. But it's that you've got to step back. That is definitely, if you want to do a good job, you got to be able to step back. It's really not all caregivers speak about their care recipient as a loved one. I was on a dissertation committee for someone who's was studying daughters caring for parents with dementia who had been abusive parents. So not everybody does this because it's loving. But when there is the love relationship, I think then one of the things that I think this sense of contented involvement allows the caregiver to get is when the person becomes involved and engaged, there are often moments of lucidity where the caregiver sees the person as she kind of was, or there's a sense of connection that is established, and there is a reward that is possible for the loving caregiver to have. I created that. I can feel that sense of connection. That's what I'm missing because of the loss, and that's what I'm getting because of the skill that I'm bringing to this role.
Thanks, Ken. Could I just ask one other question? Sorry to hog. The mastery in the moment skills, is that what you're talking about here? Is that, I think you're right, in health professionals are able to stand back and see the objective picture and understand what's going on in the trajectory of the illness. But I think untrained health professionals struggle with that because they still see the person as the person they've always known, as opposed to what's in front of them at that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I think I probably should have said this. I don't think any one program is sufficient. I think that caregivers need sort of a suite of programs. I would love to see a savvy caregiver put together with Mastery in the Moment. Mastery in the Moment is really meant to be something comes right at you, and you have developed this attitude of yes and it's collaborative. My role in this two-person act is to make you look good. And then we'll play back, and we're going to play at this. We'll play back and forth. That's different from designing something and, designing an activity. But
Thanks, Ken. Thanks,
I
appreciate
could talk
that.
about this a long time. Yeah. Yun-hee.
Yeah, well, it's just so lovely to see you again.
Yes.
There's so many things that I would love to just follow through. One of the things that we've learned from our studies involving family caregivers and people living with dementia in our rehab programs, what you described is, perfectly sitting aligned with the rehab principles. Families often struggle to make the time, and depending on who the family caregivers are. So if you've got daughters or sons currently working, they've got their other responsibilities. So it's a huge juggling act. And I wonder if you could share caregiver characteristics in your SEBI program, whether predominantly they are spouse caregivers or their daughters and sons.
Yes. Most of the caregivers I can't remember the exact, but let's say 2/3 of the caregivers in Telesavvy were spouses, and the others are daughters. One thing we teach we call the pounce technique. That people we say to caregivers, get help. That's fine. That's great advice. But how? We say, oh, how people will say to you, oh, must be so hard. It's terrible. I wish I could help you. We want the caregivers to have a response to that. We want them to have a set of things you say, you could help, and here's how. And have a strategy for involving as many people as possible in caregiving to give themselves a break. So that's whole nother thing. But I see Anne has her hand up, and I know we're running out of time. So
Just quick, Ken, I really, really enjoyed your talk. Thank you so much. Anecdotally, when I was out in Dubbo, I have to say, I was so impressed because they had just a casual understanding that a lot of people that went from their own home into residential aged care, it was a big shock because suddenly even basic things like your kitchen is taken away from you, right? You can't prepare food, you can't cook anymore. And a lot of these people that were in this particular home were very good, like prize-winning cooks. So they said, how about we get them back in the kitchen and they can start preparing our meal, like afternoon teas, morning teas, some cakes, some special parties, things like this. And this even included some of the dementia unit patients. And I just thought, wow, put on a bit of Elvis Presley music and happy days, right? Like it was just beautiful to see.
that's fabulous. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
Okay, I think we're done.
Thank you, Ken, and thanks, Anna. And yeah, both great talks, weren't they?
Great talk.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah, and I think they
everybody.
went well together too. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And thank you everybody for, especially those in Atlanta, for staying late and for you guys to get up early.
Our
Bye.
pleasure.
No
Great to
problem.
see you all.
Lovely to
Good
see
to
you
see
all.
everybody.
Thanks again
Thank
for the
you.
invitation. Bye-bye now.
And we'll be in
Bye.
touch to develop December's webinar. So we'll do this again in December.
Yun-hee,
Yes.
let's connect again. Okay.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
I send you email, Ken.
Would you? That would be great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.